right, welcome Hari. Thanks for coming in today to our office.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you, Prashant.
I'd sent, the thing that we think a lot about is preventive. So I'd like to start off by asking you about, India is a huge country, 1.4, 1.5 billion people. How do we really think about doing preventive in such a, massive country like India?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, 1.4 billion people, and the important thing about India is, like most parts of the world, more than 65% of the disease burden is non-communicable, right? Cardiology, oncology. So clearly, I think the affordability and availability is getting much, much better as a country. But I think where it is still evolving is awareness. And I think that's where possibly Sen can play a big role, because awareness and putting this together, that early detection can make a difference in the outcome, a long way to go. I think that's where the change probably needs to happen.
Now you've been, of course, at the front row. I'm not going to give away how many years at Siemens. So it's been a long and amazing time that you have seen imaging right up front. When do you think when do you see imaging playing a bigger role in prevention? So far, it's largely been about blood work and biochemistry being put to use for prevention. How do you see imaging now, in this space of preventive?
Yeah, I mean, imaging plays a very, very important role. And I think, like you mentioned, Siemens Healthineers, we have the unique capabilities, I would say, because for NCD, precise imaging to treat precisely is fundamental. And I think imaging plays a very, very important role, largely for non-communicable disease. Diagnostics does play a role, but specifically cardiovascular disease, if you take, or for cancer, imaging is a phenomenal, brings in phenomenal diagnostic value, be it the coronary angio-CTs or MR. It really changes the way how the disease can be managed and followed up. So imaging, it's been there for a while, but the breakthroughs have been phenomenal in imaging. If you look at coronary angio, ultra low dose CTs, or the photon counting CTs, and the whole body MRI. So it's been utilized a lot for curative, but for preventive, it's still evolving. And I say the tools are there, it's getting much better and better. And I think imaging plays a fundamentally important role for treatment for the non-communicable diseases.
And you spoke about these three things, the ultra low dose CT, the angio, as well as MR, the whole body MR. How do you see these three in specific coming in? What has really changed in the technology itself for them to be far more applicable for preventive? What has really changed in the last few years?
Yeah. One is on the CT side, clearly the low dose is a fundamentally a big change. There is always a concern about radiation dose, and the technologies have changed so much. For example, you can do in the photon counting CT, people who were not earlier eligible in terms of the dense calcium deposits. You have today capability to see the visuals, which is non-invasive. So that is a big innovation leapfrog, I would say, in terms of CT. Coronary angio-CTs itself, to look at it, has become ultra low dose. So these are some of the innovations in the CT. On the MR, I would fundamentally say that acceleration. What was earlier taking probably 90 minutes for a whole body MRI, today it takes possibly around 20 minutes, which is really a big step forward. And most of the players are working on acceleration in MR. So today you can do a whole body MR in 20 minutes. largely to the innovations in some of the acceleration technologies. We call it as deep resolve in Siemens, but that's the change I see. And if you're a symptomatic patient, you always have the need, you have no choice, you have to spend the time. Even then, it is important to reduce the time somebody spends. For somebody, if you want to focus on preventive in a busy day, speed matters. And I think these technologies in imaging have made it faster, very precise, and simpler. And I think, and the large focus is also on the patient experience, right? You have this fear of, let's say, unknown, or when you go through these exams, there is definitely anxiety. And we believe this anxiety can be removed because it is more patient friendly, noise free, noiseless, I must say, and it is more quicker. So for preventive, lots going on from the imaging side.
What role, I mean, we're seeing that in the last few years, especially after 22, that AI has started playing a very big role. Has this been one of the reasons why, the core technology of whether it's a dosage or whether it is scan time has come down? And are we going to see the same kind of reductions going forward as well?
Yeah. On the MR side, yes. The compute capability and AI advancements in AI clearly has played in a role in how we do the reconstruction of images. That has really become a game changer in terms of accelerating for MRI. And I think it's one is reconstruction, and I think the materials also play a role in terms of what filters we use for the CT. So it's a combination both from the hardware side, and definitely AI has played a fundamentally important role in MRI. For example, if you want to have some of the exams, for example, brain, today it is really possible to do it in a 5-minute exam. If you want to do a brain exam, it's really possible to do in a 5-minute. Whole body in 20 minutes, we already spoke. So AI advancements in compute, in AI advancements in AI in terms of some of the acceleration techniques, what we use clearly has played a role in crashing the time, I would say, for an MR exam.
And if we would be brave enough to look at the next 5 years, what do you see this arc moving into? Like, can we see that 5 minutes come down to even fewer minutes? Like, I don't know whether what should we expect? Given the dosages have come down. You spoke on the CT side, and as well as on the MR side, the scan times have come down using AI and hardware acceleration. What should we expect in the next few years that could help preventive?
Clearly, like I said, in MR, I'm hoping it will get much better. We continue, most players, including us, continue to work on making the acceleration much better in MRIs. We're also working on how to make these MRIs more friendly. When I say more friendly, today the MRIs require huge cycle requirements, right? So now we have an MRI system which is helium less helium, which is also very scarce these days. So faster, yes. Less complex to install. You can install and make it accessible any kind of infrastructure. Yeah. And on the CT side, like I said, the leapfrog has been photon counting, ultra low dose. You can visualize both the vessels as well as the walls together. So it has applications in oncology, apart from tremendous applications in cardiovascular. So it will get better, faster, and maybe, who knows, we are now working on how to look at dry cool technology in MRIs in 3 Tesla systems. We have MRIs. We started the journey from permanent magnets to 1 Tesla to 1.5. So a lot is changing, and if I look at the journey over the years, definitely speed and making it faster, quieter, comfortable for patients is clearly the way forward for these modalities.
I think what you said was very true. I think it has to be a collaborative effort. I think Siemens has of course led the way in MR globally in technology. It requires other stakeholders to also put up their hand and come forward to making it to build awareness, what you spoke about, and then also to make it affordable. And other thing that you spoke about also was experience. I remember, I'm sure that I wasn't born then, but in the early 70s or 60s, I'm assuming that flying would have been a very dangerous thing, and people might have seen to it as a may have an higher incident rate. Similarly, today imaging is seen mostly in the hospital ecosystem, and I'm sure it's a dreaded image to most because when you see an MRI machine or a CT machine, because of the context of a hospital and the context of curative, and you're usually given that diagnosis of um, of getting a CT or MR in a different context. I'm wondering that how do we make the experience better, so that the patient doesn't feel fearful of the machine, right? So how do we improve the experience to make it even more accessible?
Yeah, I think it starts with awareness, Shashank, because they've been very proud of innovations and how we have brought them into the market. But we also realize, I don't know whether you know this, scanxiety is a real word if you look up. Scanxiety.
So scanxiety, okay. Yeah. Anxiety is scanxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a real thing, and your heart races if you have to get into one of these. So I think it starts with awareness. Today's technologies are faster, much friendlier. I think there's a need to build. So actually, we kind of ran a campaign called "Knowing is Comforting." That how much early diagnosis can change the outcome, and you don't have to fear. And knowing gives you hope, and you don't have to dread. So we ran a campaign called "Knowing is Comforting," only to build awareness to start with. Our mission is actually, which possibly resonates with Cent, is to clearly give consumers and patients hope rather than dread of the disease. And I think making it faster and friendlier, and where you call them counselors, technologists, people spend time explaining things to the patients, and it is not complex machinery. Earlier, the equipment room and the setup for MR is quite complex. Today, it is much quieter, much faster. But as I said, it all starts with awareness, that getting to know earlier matters. I think it has to start from there.
Yeah, so we spoke about awareness, we spoke about affordability, we spoke about the experience. Like the indoor one, I can tell you that the MR machine that I got into last I watched my favorite episode of Seinfeld while getting the MR done, and it was a very different experience. And like you said, the fearing the machine or the scanxiety has to turn into curiosity. The one other aspect that I have seen around imaging, which is a major constraint, has been a lot of myths around. And I'll tell you one such myth. Even a lot of the people I've come across, even Ivy League graduates, have this common misconception that, hey, if I go into MRI, there is radiation in MRI. I don't know if you've come across this, right? I mean, I know it's not taught in schools probably like as a everyday knowledge, but there's still a lot of myths around imaging and around getting into these machines. So clearly, there's a lot to be done on reducing these myths as well.
Yeah, I agree. Today, like I said, most of the such interventions happen when there is an episode or an event. But it is moving, the needle is moving towards doing it earlier as part of your annual screening process. And in many of the corporate screening process typically has certain standard procedures, but it is not broad-based to include imaging. I think it's about building awareness. And yeah, MR, I mean, largely healthcare practitioners are the best people to kind of speak on this, when to do a test or an exam. But I think post-COVID, probably there has been a shift. There has been a huge interest in getting a coronary CT, coronary angio CT done, even for a person who doesn't have any symptoms. Or so I think it has happened, it has evolved, but there is a lot more to be done. And I think the good thing is, at least in top 10, 20 location, there is, and with a younger and probably even a larger population, awareness to get a comprehensive health checkup done, which includes imaging.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, there is a need to debunk some
Yeah.
of those
Myths.
myths.
Yeah, Hari, I mean, the incidents that happened in my family, unfortunately, and breast cancer was one of them. And in a matter of 8 months, had 3 people in my family and very close friend circle succumb to as asymptomatic patients, succumb to 4-stage cancer, and the first time they went to the doctor itself, it was too late. So clearly, both with empirical as well as anecdotal life experiences, we are seeing that this is becoming a growing threat, and an absolute need of the hour is to get, in a clinically validated way, imaging as part of the prevention setup, and that's how Cent happened. And so when we came to you first and we spoke to you about this, I'm just curious what went through your mind, and how has the journey been so far?
Yeah, I mean, first thought, of course, it was quite striking that those unfortunate events moved you to do something, and you invested so much time to dig deeper, including studying MR physics, I would say, to think of this, that you want to solve this. But the other side of, I've heard this before, kind of a thing. But I'm super happy to see that from those initial conversations we had, the speed at which Cent has moved, you and Cent have moved to get to where you are today, and the depth at which you guys are looking at it, and how we are putting this whole thing emphasis on preventive, but with a focus of consumer first. I think it's been a good journey, and many people have tried, or I would say many people are also now focusing more sharply on this. But my initial reaction was one of yes, but what I like is the ability to repeat this, or let's say scale it and replicate this model everywhere, is quite interesting thought. And I think this is need. Like I said, if you look at it just from an opportunity point of view, 600 million people, median age of 30, most of the diseases are latent. And if you do early diagnosis, a 10% change is a system level effect on the whole population. So it's a, one is to have an idea, another is to see it through, I think is the exciting phase. And like I said, technology will play an important role, but to execute this and to put a very, very specific emphasis on preventive, I think time is now.
Thanks for sharing that, Hari. And I must say that it's the first few scans started just about 6-8 months back, and this very short time period we have done about 2,200 plus scans, almost closing in on 1,000 scans a month now, in a very fast way, and that would not have been possible without your support, without Siemens support, and for the number one MRI manufacturers in the world to support this initiative, and to has been one of the biggest reasons why we've been able to move this fast. So wanted to know your thoughts on where do you see this partnership going? What kind of impact can this have a few years out, and what more can happen? in this space.
Yeah, like I said, as one of the world leaders in imaging and the role it plays in prevention, and our mission is really to serve the consumers and patients, um, to give hope and not have dread, largely resonates with your vision of really scaling and focus only on preventive. And I remember you saying when in many of our meetings, I don't want any unfortunate event to happen anywhere. That's the first focus. Then about improving the quality. I think um, it really resonates well, and I feel we'll be very happy to see this taking shape and growing big. Like I said, this is the need of the hour, and we also would learn from this partnership how to emphasize. We talked about awareness and even also innovate technologies focused on preventive, making it much better for the consumers and patient, largely on preventive. And I think I see a big opportunity to scale this and repeat this across Shashank. There are several others do, but I think this has to become a movement, and I feel naturally there is a match in terms of what we set out to do.
That's awesome, Mary. And what I'm also seeing is that I've spent nearing 2 decades now in the what I call the before the doctor space, be it Practo or be it Cent. And we're bringing we're seeing that there's a lot of leveraging of technology that can happen to improve the consumer's life. Through Practo, it was through patients, and in Cent, it's for consumers, which who are asymptomatic, and some are silently carrying very critical illnesses, some are carrying silent diseases, and some are just aging way faster than they should. And so technologies that Siemens is building. To be very honest, when I had these 3 unfortunate events in my life, I was just surprised that there's so much innovation that's already happened, at Siemens, in the imaging space, in the genetic space, in so many. It just lacked a very clear, focused go-to-market. It lacked that technologies being packaged in a way in which normal users, like you mentioned, the common hurdles that they face of accessibility, affordability, experience, the myth busting, trust creation was missing. And I'm happy that our partnership was able to solve that problem, and it has brought this technology which has been there and is developing at a very fast pace to everyone. What's my last question to you would be, if you were to kind of put out something into the world, your vision of what, in a 10-year period or 15-year period, that maybe India can lead the world in the preventive space. What would that preventive space look like, and what would you want 10 years or 15 years from now to be common stakes that's right now not common?
Well, that's yeah. I think like most screening programs include imaging as part of the annual checkup. Clearly, largely would address much of the disease burden. I'm specifically on cancer and cardiovascular. I feel the outcome will be dramatic if there is a clear focus on making preventive the protocol for everybody. And I think we're already solving the accessibility, our affordability. I think the important thing is to scale this across. I think that would be the challenge. Yeah, and I think on the technology side, as we call ourselves so-called as med technology company, I think like everything, I mean, operating these technologies, making it simpler, possibly making it autonomous. There are already early research going on how to make this even better and more accessible will be interesting to see. But I think what is important is to really scale this preventive as possibly the standard protocol would dramatically change outcome for most of the NCDs the way I see it.
So billions of people doing preventive checkups, which includes imaging. That's what we should aim for. So two of us have said it, and there's a third person in Elon Musk who has also said it recently. So I think, given his track record, hopefully, this comes true, and a few, maybe, a few years or maybe in 10 years, billions of people do preventive in a way in which it's very comprehensive, which includes all the latest technology that Siemens is building, and hopefully what Cent brings to the table. So thanks, Hari, for the conversation today, and also for the partnership, which I'm hopeful will impact people's lives dramatically in the coming years and make a positive change in society.
Thank you, Shashank.